And to be very honest, like, I could, but honestly, I don't really feel like it. Maybe it's actually true. Maybe gym guys can't perform in the bedroom. We can't know that for sure because, maybe she's saying that from her experience with a couple of gym rats. And to be very honest, that's kind of just her thing. But the way I look at it, if
the royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man who did consider adding running his mouth to his cardio routine. It is none other than a tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here to talk about the male species, or more so the fact that people just seem to not understand the male species very well. Because I've got a bunch of instances here, okay, mainly two, but I've got a bunch of instances here where it just seems like people seem to have lost the plot when it comes to guys. Whether it's guys when they're boys, whether it's guys when they're fully grown men, whether it's guys in the bedroom. It's like people just seem to have lost the plot. And by people, I mean women. And a few other individuals, because in the main topic, it wasn't just the women that was saying it. Actually, I suspect that it was a man that was saying what was being said, although that is something that I will get to eventually. And at least when I do get to the end of this episode, at least there should be some sense to everything that's been said, or at least I will put some sense in there, of which I hope you do listen all the way till the end. And if you do like the episode, if you don't like it, if you have a different form of feedback, or if you'd like to suggest a potential episode or topic for an episode, then you can hit me up. The DMs are always open, and the links to the social media are always in the description, or I'll end up mentioning them at the end of the episode. So you should probably listen all the way till the end. There's benefits, at least. And if you do end up being on any one of those social media platforms, a nice follow would be appreciated, because why the hell not? You're already there, and it's not gonna cost you anything to follow and to listen to more episodes and shit. But all in all, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you listen all the way till the end, because I do need to get to the bottom of why I feel as though people just have it in for guys. It's like being a boy, you just can't please people. Being a man, you just can't please people. Nowadays, it just feels like it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type situation. Although, before I can get into any of that, I first want to start by addressing an issue that I feel just kind of ends up being pushed under the rug or just ignored by guys, because it's something that some women have said that irks me a certain way, but I can kind of understand why they'd say it, because it just seems like some of them either have something against a certain type of guy, or they just don't like a particular set of guys. Now, the reason I'm saying all of this is because there was a clip that I saw online where a lady was busy talking about how gym guys are apparently not that great in bed. And it was something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Not because, I know guys perform well in bed, or gym guys perform well in bed. It's not like I sleep with any of them. It is something that kind of goes into some of the stereotypes that are there and where they probably come from. But before I can give my full thoughts on this entire thing, let me just let the clip play, then I can talk about it. So, without further ado,
guys, hakuna wanaume bure kama hao wanaume wamekula chuma. Unapata mwanaume ni tall, dark and handsome. Ameenda gym, amekula gym. Yani yako smart. Amekula gym mpaka unasema yenyewe nimeangukia. Umeangukia nini? Guys, mimi sijui kama mimi ndo nakutana na wenye bure. Unakuta mwanaume ni bure. Hakuna wanaume bure kama hao wenye wameenda gym. Wanajisikia ni kwa barabara, yani hiyo barabara ni yake, na kuna kitu wenye kwa nayo. Hao wanaume ni bure.
Okay, as a tall, dark and mildly handsome man, this did kind of trigger me a little bit, because what kind of expectation are you giving people out here? It's like people saying that I can't perform. Okay, to be very honest, I don't really know if I'm that great of a performer or not. All I have is whatever it is that people may or may not tell me, if I do end up getting involved with them. But, all that said and done, first of all, like, listening to this, most people would probably think that because I'm a guy that does work out a little bit from time to time, that I'd feel some type of way because, I feel triggered. She mentioned tall, dark, and handsome, and they go and they pump iron and they go to the gym a lot. And apparently, she's saying it as though these guys just can't perform. And to be very honest, like, I could, but honestly, I don't really feel like it. Maybe it's actually true. Maybe gym guys can't perform in the bedroom. We can't know that for sure because, maybe she's saying that from her experience with a couple of gym rats. And to be very honest, that's kind of just her thing. But the way I look at it, if a babe is saying this on the internet and, she's getting a couple other babes who are admitting the same thing, it could be that it's true, or it could be that maybe they just had shit experiences with guys that do work out, or it could just be a situation where they would much rather demonize them than actually talk about the fact that they would want them. Or maybe those guys just didn't meet the expectations, because actually, the expectations bit does kind of lead into a lot of stereotypes, at least as far as like potential partners are concerned when I think about it. Because when you look at it, usually what happens is there's this thing where people like to put certain character traits or certain people on these hollow pedestals and then go and check if there's any substance in there. So if there's substance, suddenly they are pedestalized even more, and it's like, oh my goodness, they're the most amazing thing since sliced bread. But once that pedestal is shown to be hollow and, the person kind of sinks in, suddenly it's like, oh, they're so useless, they can barely do jack shit, blah, 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 they're garbage. And I hear this happen a lot when it comes to guys and even women, because you'll hear women talking about how, they don't like light-skinned guys because light-skinned guys are just soft. Or they'll talk about how gym guys can't perform in bed. Or they'll talk about how rich guys can't perform in bed. And the truth of it is, it seems like for a lot of these women that usually say things that are related to that, it's because originally they thought that if they got with some of those examples, that they'd expect something either really good or absolutely great and mind-blowing, and they didn't get that, and they didn't like the performance, or they didn't like that particular person, so they automatically switched up the whole thought process and they were like, what, I expected more, and there was all of this hype that I had around this person and they didn't match up to the hype, so they're garbage. So, Shorty met up with a gym rat and the gym rat didn't perform as she'd have wanted. She expected more because, the guy's been pumping iron. He should be able to, do a little bit of that cardio. But apparently he couldn't, maybe he's just built for lifting hard things like life. And, Shorty decided, what, guys like that are garbage. Or, it's an instance where, Shorty thought that the rich dude, besides the money, would also come with good dick. But apparently he doesn't have good dick because, as some women like to say, broke dick is the best dick. And, they'll go and they'll try and find ways to reinforce those stereotypes. But the reality of it is, some of those, actually, I'd argue that a lot of those so-called stereotypes stem from singular moments that don't entirely tie up to shit. Because someone can talk about how, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. Because they don't want light-skinned dudes. But at the end of the day, it's not like dark-skinned dudes can't be soft. It's not like gym rats or gym dudes can't be great in bed. Not that I'm saying they are, I don't have any experience with them, fortunately. And that's just maybe one or two instances. And there's also instances where rich guys may not perform, but there's other instances where rich guys perform just as well as the broke dudes. So you really, really will just see these stereotypes pop up, and they are mostly based off of garbage. And more often than not, the loudest people who reinforce these stereotypes are the ones that will get one or two garbage interactions, not an entire myriad of them. Not that I'm asking for people to go out and be hoes for the sake of, doing studies and shit, but it is something that I do see happen from time to time. And it also affects women as well. People will talk about how, oh, big babes or thick babes are lazy in bed. Skinny babes are the ones who know how to do it. Or skinny babes are hoes. Thick babes are the ones that you should probably stick with. And most of the time, most of those stereotypes are just based off of garbage. Like, rarely is there ever any real proof that whatever it is that people will say about one group versus another will be completely true. Because people will talk about how, pretty girls are bad in bed, but the ugly ones are the ones who know how to write. But when you look at the reality of it, those people started by pedestalizing these very beautiful women and thinking they'd be amazing to sleep with, but suddenly they try it out maybe once or twice and they realize that, maybe she had a bunch of pretty privilege and there's nothing more to it. Maybe the beauty was all the hype and there's nothing else after that. And suddenly it's like, it's ugly babes that know how to write because blah blah blah. And most of that is just based off of slop. It's full on top tier garbage. And the more people talk about shit like this, the more I realize that people are going to have their own stereotypes, and it'll hold them back from potentially good relationships and meeting particularly good people. But it also allows them to segregate themselves and also justify some of the less than mainstream or less than conventional ideas on who they should end up with or who they should be with. So, you know what? If you feel like the typical gym dude will be garbage in bed so they're not for you, then fine, cool. That's entirely a you thing. You don't have to go for the gym dudes. You can go for other guys. You can go for the skinny guy that you feel might probably have a big dick, or the fat dude that, will be able to go for rounds and shit. You don't have to stick to the gym rat. And for the guy that's working out in the gym, you continue doing you. Maybe you should look into trying to improve your performance if you're garbage, but, you continue doing you, because she's not your target market. There's babes that'll definitely be into you. So both sides can just leave each other alone. And with that said, because I feel like I've talked too much about this, I'm going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, one of the wildest things about being a man today is not just the fact that we're busy trying to survive in a world that economically might not be advantageous for most of us, but there's also just trying to deal with the newer ideas of quote-unquote masculinity, where we're being told that, it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to show a soft side, blah, blah, blah. And the thing with that is, it's kind of gotten to a point where people are looking at it as good or bad at the same time. And you'll constantly hear women busy talking about, so-and-so isn't a masculine man because they're doing this and this, which makes them soft and weak. But at the same time, they will say that they want a softer, more caring man. They will want a man that is vulnerable and shows their softer side, which is something that I find particularly odd. But usually that's kind of just on the men. But the moment they decide to take it to the boys, now I have a problem. Not because, I'm a priest and I would like to touch some of them, but because I feel like we really have gotten to a point where we have just started trying to put men and just boys and just the male species in general in a box that they probably shouldn't be in. And the reason I say this is because I stumbled across a particularly interesting Reddit post where some person was busy talking about how apparently the next generation of men are some of the weakest men that there will be. And the title of the post was "The Next Generation, the Weak Men of Nairobi." So I am going to read this post to then give my thoughts on it. So it says, and I quote, "I took my nephew to his under 13 football match today. What a joke. Kids lose the ball and everyone claps. Someone gets tackled, they cry. It's not competition, it's group therapy in jerseys. If this is the next generation, they're cooked. No grit, no confidence, just a crowd of soft egos raised on participation trophies and you tried energy. You can see the fragility forming in real time. I don't even want kids, but damn, it's painful to watch what kind of men we're raising. If you've got a child, push them towards psychology. That field's gonna explode. Someone's gonna have to clean up the emotional wreckage these kids grow into." End quote. Okay. Now, this is particularly interesting because the person who did actually do this post has straight up said that they do not want to have kids. But they are the same ones that are talking about how the kids that other people have produced are supposedly so weak that it's going to be a problem for the next generation of men, which is a little bit odd. All right, it is a little bit odd. And normally I'd say, you know what, I don't have kids, this isn't really my place to talk about it, blah, blah, blah. But the truth of it is, if someone who doesn't have kids feels like they're valid enough to make such statements, then I, who chooses to pull out, also should have the right to make some statements to counteract whatever dude is saying. Because why shouldn't I, if the guy could say that? And to be honest, like when I got to the comments, there was some particularly interesting comments that I saw, which did kind of show that, you know, some people understand the issues that affect a lot of the kids today. Some people are still looking at the past and thinking that they were harder. And I'll read some of them. So I'm gonna read one which says, and I quote, "I blame people like you. This lack of masculinity is because they don't learn. Kids have to be taught, they have to be trained, and none of you wants to be responsible, yet you, an uncle, is somehow complaining whose responsibility is this supposed to be?" End quote. Which is a particularly straightforward and very good comment, because it's clearly showing that, you know what, there's clearly an issue here, because like you could have tried to show him how to be a better quote-unquote man, or you know, you could have tried to show him a better way, but you're just sitting on the sidelines busy complaining. And I can remember making a complaint about this a couple of episodes ago, like maybe 20-30 episodes ago, when I was busy talking about how guys are losing out because there's a ton of people that are busy saying, oh, you know, the boy child is suffering, but they're not doing shit to help the boy child. So all you're doing is just complaining but not doing fuck all about the entire thing. Anyways, let me read another comment which said, and I quote, "So if a 10-year-old gets tackled, lands on his arm badly, he or she should just walk it off and not cry because of the pain? Y'all are dumb as fuck. And it's not even as tough as you think. Let kids be kids. You're not cool just because you don't cry. Y'all are dumb." End quote. Of which I do agree. Like, let the kid be a kid. You guys are gatekeeping this whole masculinity and you know they're gonna grow up to be a man thing a little too hard. Like this whole thing of, oh, you know, you have to raise them to be a man by giving them hard shit to do and letting them have to, you know, deal with hard shit all the fucking time. Like, even you deal with hard shit, but it's not like it's hard all the time. Like, there has to be areas where you're allowed to do things. And even the way dude was describing shit, like it didn't sound like everyone was soft and weak like that. A lot of that was very, very good sportsmanship, where, you know, there's instances where, you know, if there's a loss that's happened, you know, you all clap for each other. You all came through, you all put in some work. Fine, you didn't win, but at least you all came in and you put in some work. And you can talk about how, oh, you know, that you tried energy is bad, but hell, like, that's the kind of shit that gets people coming back the next time, instead of saying loser and then, you know, just watching someone walk off and feel like shit. But anyways, let me read the last comment, then I can get to my thoughts on the entire thing. So this one actually hit me pretty hard. And it was someone who said, and I quote, "This isn't limited to kids. We have a whole generation of weak men, but you can't say anything because their response is either you don't understand mental health or we are not boomers who glorify suffering." End quote. And okay, this y'all are the same ones that said that you wanted softer men. Y'all are the same ones that said you wanted men to be vulnerable. But it's like, people want men to be vulnerable when they want them to be vulnerable, and the rest of the time they want them to be hard because their fathers were hard and this current generation is weaker and softer. Like, at what point is it going to stop being a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario for guys? Because when you're not soft and you choose to be hard the entire time, suddenly it's like, oh no, the problem is that you're hard the entire time, you need to be softer. You decide to be soft even for a little bit, and it's like, oh, this generation of men is so bloody weak. And it gets to a point where it just becomes so fucking tiring, where you are constantly having to show that, you know what, even though I'm going through this and this, it's not like I'm a weak man. I'm still trying to be a man in whatever way that I can be, but people are saying that I should be vulnerable, but at the same time, people are saying that I shouldn't be weak or soft. Like, what kind of men do you guys want? Because, I don't know, like, maybe there's a special setting for this shit, but I don't know. Honestly, I stopped trying to give a fuck. If you think of me as a soft man, fine, I'll be a soft man. If you think of me as weak, fine, I'll be a weak man. But I am sick and tired of being thrown into one box and then being demonized for being in that box by the same people who put me in that box. But anyways, I sort of digressed there for a little bit. Sorry, my bad. Let me just get to what it is that I was going to say about this entire thing. Now, first of all, I feel like people don't understand parenting. Granted, I also probably don't understand parenting. I don't have any kids. I haven't had any kids yet. But one of the things that I noticed is that how a lot of people parent their kids is basically based on how they viewed their parentage and trying to learn from it. So if, for example, you were raised by parents that were, very quick to beat you or like very quick to punish you if you fucked up, and you felt like it was so bad, when you get a kid, you will probably choose a much lighter form of punishment, and you might choose better correction because you didn't like how that happened, or at least how that affected you growing up. It's kind of how there's a lot of people that came up through hardship, and the moment they made a bunch of money and they built a bunch of wealth, they got kids and they were like, you know what, my child will never lack. And as a result of that, they've ended up spoiling their kids. So a lot of the parentage is based off of how we viewed our parentage or how we were parented as kids and trying to make adjustments to that. Then also, most people today, at least from the way I usually see a lot of parents, will typically parent their kids in one of two ways. And that will be you parenting your kid within the present circumstances, or you will parent your kids with an outlook towards the future. So you find that within the present is, okay, there's something that's affecting them today. Let me go and sort it out today so that I can make sure that they're comfortable today. And then there's the people that will try to parent their kids with an outlook towards the future, where they will basically be like, you know what, let them go through A, B, C, and D so that they will be better off in the future, or so that they learn A, B, C, D, or the value of A, B, C, D for, when they are grown up and they're sort of handling some jack, like, this, that, and the other. And don't get me wrong, like, it's not like one is better than the other. Both are very, very useful. Parenting your kid isn't just looking towards the future or looking at the present. It's having an outlook on both, at least, from my very minute understanding. And you tend to see that more often than not, individuals who are parents will lean towards one side versus the other. So you'll find that more mothers will sort of do the whole parenting within the present outlook, and more dads will kind of have that more, outlook towards the future kind of vibe. Granted, it doesn't have to be the mother or the father, it can always interchange and so on, but essentially both are valid and both need to be used within reason. So you taking care of a kid so that they don't get hurt during a football match isn't you making them soft for the future, it's you protecting them right now. Both of those things can be true at the exact same time. Even when you think about it, to some degree, you kind of have to admit, like, it's better to have a kid that doesn't have any lifelong injuries because of, sustained damage during football matches, all because they got a couple of shin pads that might make them seem quote-unquote soft, as opposed to having a kid that has had injuries that may not be able to do certain things because they got injuries because they were playing football when they were a kid. All because their parents were like, you know what, let's not get them any guards, let's not get them any padding because they'll become weak. So you kind of look at it like, a lot of the people that talk about, this newer generation is weak, like, they're just looking at old shit from back in the day, and they're busy trying to compare, and they think that just because they had it hard that it made them better. Like, truth of it is, every generation, and I also saw this in a different comment, like, every generation is going to have its own issues, but every generation is always going to look at the next generation as weaker. And this is a pretty good example. The current generation of kids are dealing with a very different set of problems as opposed to us millennials, whether you're talking about, some of us late ones or, even the earlier ones. Gen Zs have gone through a different set of problems. Gen X went through a different set of problems. So calling the later generation weaker simply because they didn't have to go through the same hardships that you've had to go through is just you looking at things from a very myopic point of view. You'd assume that maybe you might be better off with what it is that you went through back in the day in like the current generation of boys, but you'd be surprised how much a lot of the older folk that claim that the newer generation is so much weaker would be unable to cope with the issues that the younger generation, or should I say, the newer generation of boys are going through. Which kind of leads me to the conclusion in all of this, which is every generation will have its own challenges. Whether it's Gen X, whether it's the baby boomers, whether it's the silent generation, whether it's millennials, whether it's Gen Z, Alpha, or Gen Beta. So calling the younger generation weak because they're not dealing with your challenges and their challenges are a little bit different and maybe they might seem easier to handle but they're different is just your way of coping with the fact that they're probably getting it better than you did as far as an environmental perspective is concerned. And you are probably feeling some type of way because you feel like if you were in their position, you'd be doing a hell of a lot more. But the truth of it is, you're not in their position. You probably don't fully understand their challenges. So maybe, just maybe, you probably should shut the fuck up. Or like in this guy's case, I'd probably advise that you get some of your own kids and you raise them the way you want. Of which, if you're gonna be hard the entire time, I actually hope you don't have kids because those kids might suffer. Either way, I might be wrong about this entire thing, but I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.